Welcome to the New Masculine Podcast. This is a place where masculine identifying people come together in community to disrupt outdated models of masculinity and together construct new models for our way forward as men. As a special note, while this conversation is between men, this podcast values all beings and seeks to create positive impacts for all. I'm your host, Travis Stock. I am a master life coach, an equus coach, which means I often partner with horses when supporting clients, and I'm a teacher. In my coaching work, I am passionate about the balance of masculine and feminine energies in each of us, regardless of gender. I seek to help others nurture a relationship with both types of energy, which often leads to a greater sense of wholeness. And yet what I found in my work with men is that many of us have been taught messages about what it means to be a man by first teaching us to avoid anything that is associated with the feminine. That avoidance leads to few experiences of intimacy, emotions outside of anger, vulnerability, or even a sense of belonging. Striving to comply with these models of masculinity has many of us feeling isolated, ashamed, unworthy, afraid, angry, and depressed. That's why I started this podcast, to bring men together who are ready for something new, something more whole. It's hard for me to think of a more valuable skill to develop living in this world right now than resilience. It helps steady us when navigating stress, makes us more flexible to what is out of our control, and helps us bounce back in trying times. But resilience isn't just something we have, it's often built through phases of life involving significant challenge, stress, and loss. Hopefully my next guest, Wayne Forrest, can help us navigate these waters. Wayne is a certified mastery consultant, motivational speaker, life coach, and TEDx speaker, but it's his own story of resilience and reinvention after a traumatic sports injury in his mid-20s that highlights the human spirit's ability to thrive regardless of the circumstances. Some other things that are important to Wayne are that he's a spiritual being having a human experience, he's a family man, and he's someone to learn everyone and every experience. Let's not waste any more time getting him into the New Masculine to share his story. Thanks for joining me, Wayne.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
It's a pleasure. We're across the world from each other. We've been able to navigate our time zone differences, and it's wonderful to have someone from New Zealand here on the podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation.
It is. What else feels important for people to know about you before we jump into the meat of this conversation?
No, I think you rounded it up quite nicely. It's just I've got many hats to my life, I suppose, and I've had this amazing experience. 55 years now, and there's definitely been some ups and downs, and yet creation and creating a life out of all those experiences is just awesome. Very
Well,
awesome.
that's what we're here to talk about on this podcast: the ups and the downs, and how we make it through it, and how we find ourselves freer and freer as we move through our lives and as we grow. So let's get into the beginning part of your story, the early parts. So tell me about what it was like growing up for you as a boy in your culture and the things you were interested in, all that kind of stuff. Like, what are some of the stories that come to mind when you think about what you learned about being a boy turning into a man?
I was blessed. I grew up to a family, farming family, in a coastal area of the North Island of New Zealand. Pretty isolated, sort of like a good hour from any decent town. And I grew up on the front of my grandfather's horse. He was a shepherd, a dog man. He had his dogs working the stock, and he whistled, whistling, using his whistle to give the dogs direction. And I absolutely fell in love with it. That was my early memory, and I just absolutely loved farming and being physical and working and being out on the farm right before school even. And then school wasn't my best place. I didn't really enjoy that at all. But school has sport, and the two went really well together
Mm,
in that community. It's that real tough, tough physical sport, and that's why I loved rugby. And uh, I played rugby from the age of 5 right up until when I had my accident at
Oh,
20.
a little guy starting out in rugby, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And, I wanted to play against the big boys. It was that kind of upbringing.
Mm.
Mm.
Sounds like both the sort of living on a farm, living close to the land, as well as sport are like kind of two primary places where you learned a lot about living in this world and a lot about how you wanted to show up in this world.
Yeah, work hard, physically
Yeah.
work hard. Even though I wasn't very good at school, I definitely worked hard at school. Um, and that was kind of, you know, that's what we saw. My parents worked hard. My grandparents worked hard physically and mentally, and long hours and big days, and that's kind of, up, that's what made me who I am, I
Mm.
suppose, in those early days.
Hmm. And
Mm.
what was it about rugby and sport in general that you were drawn to? Like, what made you want to apply that hard work a lot to that sport place?
Uh, it's it's something deep inside you, Travis. I think it's that wanting to be a man.
Mm.
It's we're born um, as hunters originally, right? So I think it's that part of us, that physical part, that wanting to be a big masculine man, and provide and all those sort of things. And it all goes uh, hand in hand, especially with that lifestyle, riding horses from an early age, falling off, climbing trees, exploring the bush, hunting. I had a gun. I had a 22 at the age of 11, all those. So you can see that I really immersed myself in it and loved it. Had my own horse and dogs at about the same age, 10, 11, where I could do a man's job. My father actually saw me as one of the workers, because I could do just about anything that any other man could do at that
Mm.
early age, because I absolutely immersed myself into it right from day dot. Mm.
I wonder if that's true of many of like farming communities and agricultural communities here, even in the United States. That at least generationally, previously, I wonder if more children were as involved in it as you like you were, and sort of as we've more industrialized and moved away from certain agricultures and had machines that do a lot of that sort of farming work. I wonder if that's become less prominent. But I wonder if other kids felt that way too in their childhood. They were close to that and were a part of the part of the farming machine, as it will.
Yeah, I think very much in the cowboy sort of
Yeah.
uh, you know, American cowboys sort of,
Hmm.
rustling cattle and all that sort of thing. They grew up, especially my age group, they grew up because there wasn't, these days you have to keep your kids safe. But w-
There's definitely a different way that we navigate children than back then, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you know, I I'd rather have my upbringing any day.
Mm,
Me personally.
yeah. It's interesting. I come from a background previously to my coaching work where I worked for the child welfare departments here in the United States, and so part of my job was sort of looking at abuse and neglect with children and making sure that children were safe. And so it's interesting because I feel some tension around that for myself around like how much we um, shelter children from now and keep them away from, and yet the world has evolving and things are more dangerous and there are things that are scary. And so I find this tension point between, it's like I so get what you're saying and agree with you that those are the ways in which children can grow and learn really naturally, is to be a part of the family, a part of the work, a part of all of that. And then I've also seen where that goes wrong, and then there's challenges that are created for children who never actually get certain versions of childhood.
Yeah, and for my own upbringing, there was a little bit of resentment in my teens that
Mm.
that I worked. I never got to have a holiday.
Uh-huh.
That little bit of rebellion
Mhm.
came out, and resentment against my parents. It wasn't really their fault because I absolutely loved it as a little kid. But but when it came time at 14 or 15 where I wanted to go on holiday and I had to stay home and work, and my siblings were allowed to go, that that did create a little bit of sort of like resentment of I have to work, because I was seen as one of the workers.
Mhm. How did that show up? Like, how did you manifest that resentment? Did it show up in your behaviors?
Oh, to like any teenage
Uh,
boy, I probably did,
yeah.
Not terribly. I probably just was swearing under my breath at my parents, really. But it didn't really show much more than that.
Yeah,
Might have
which one of
been
us wasn't doing that though?
Yeah, I might have been a bit grumpy for a few days, but,
Yeah.
soon got over it.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
There's a romance to your childhood of being around horses at such a young age. I work with horses now in my adult life, but horses didn't really come into my life until my late 20s. And so there's a part of me that wishes that I had that. Like, I have a lot of comfort with horses. I've helped run a horse ranch. I work with them regularly, and yet there's something about, like, the comfort of growing up with them that I'll probably never have, that sort of, like, in my cells kind of knowledge of horses that, uh, I feel a little like, "Oh, man, I wish I had that."
Yeah, I don't think it really matters when. I think times have changed too, like just the care of a horse compared to when I grew up. I've got um, memories where we treated our horses a bit like pretty rough. They were tools,
They're tools of the farm, yeah.
they were tools. So my belief system and understanding is definitely grown
Mm,
from when I was a child. So my we've got 2 horses here. My wife's into horses, and it's more about the relationship, and, that's a beautiful thing. So, I
I
don't
love
need
hearing that journey because that's one of the things I love working with men who have traditionally thought of horses as a tool and as a mechanism for either racing or for a tool for a farm or something that is more they're a thing to use, and yet there's a relationship with a being that has the size of its brain is just emotional part of its brain is just as big as our human part. It doesn't do it the exact same way we do it, but it's a large emotional part. They're a communal animal that understands power dynamics, and there's just so much we can learn from them when we pay attention to the relationship. And I feel that's the one part I do feel lucky about a little bit later on in my life coming into relationship with them is that's where I started. I hardly ever ride a horse. I hardly ever engage with them in the traditional ways. It's all very on the ground relational elements.
Yeah, we definitely had a relationship with them. I've got some real fond memories of horses.
Uh-huh.
Um, and some of the funny, interactions that we had. Um, yeah, but it's definitely different.
Yeah.
It's definitely more aware of their spiritual uh,
Mm.
being and how they can really affect us
Mhm.
emotionally when we um, mature into that, I suppose.
Mm, yeah,
Mm.
for sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about your journey with rugby because I know that's going to be sort of a pivotal part of the storytelling that you'll share as we keep going. But what did you learn in rugby? What were like some of the lessons you got from it? What drew you to it so much as a child?
Well, a big part of it was that Uh, I didn't find out until I had my accent that I was dyslexic. So
Mm,
I really, really struggled at school and felt quite dumb at times, right? And Rugby, because of my background of farming and being quite physically strong, even though I mightn't have been big, I am 6'3", but I've always been quite slim. And but rugby I I was not feared, but had a lot of people respected me on the rugby field because of that resilience, of that, never giving up, and it fed my ego, I suppose.
Mm,
It made me feel uh, better about myself, and that comes from figuring out now, in hindsight, that I had this ego that was constantly talking to me that I wasn't enough.
mm,
I didn't feel enough. I felt like I had to um, be more physical than anyone else. I had to outdrink anybody else. I had to, party longer, whatever it was. And that all stemmed from this deep desire that I wasn't enough inside me. Um,
that's really interesting that it both gave you a place to thrive, meaning like school wasn't as easy. So you could put all your energy in this place and you could have success and you could achieve and you could dominate in some ways. So it gave you a place to thrive, but it also was a place that kind of fed into your biggest fear that you weren't enough.
right. And at the end of the day, Travis, the accident was caused by the same voice.
Uh,
And the moment, I know exactly. I've got a couple of memories of just a couple of thoughts that I had, and one was a quite a good rugby player was on the sideline for us, reserving, and he had played really good rugby. He was 10 years older than me, um, and I was captain of the day. I injured my arm. He came on with the water and said, "Hey, Forry, give me a go," which was my nickname. There's only a few minutes left. I didn't want him to come on because I didn't want him to show me up.
mm,
And then I took the ball into contact in the last minutes of that game, and two guys held me up and started to rip the ball off me. My voice was like, "No one rips the ball off me." So I put myself in danger to keep the ball. Um, and 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 that's a direct link to that same voice that I have to do more. I have to. No one beats me. Um, which it's a great voice in some aspects, but it's also the voice that put me in the situation where I dislocated my neck.
mm. Yeah, I mean that I love that you point out that it is like a good voice in some ways, and it also is what puts you in danger because it is sort of like it is a big part of sports culture and a part of man culture too to be like not let someone up one up you, not let someone win over you, to achieve, to strive, to like not let adversity get in your way. And you're right. I can see where there's strength in that. There's part of that word I was describing in the intro around resilience. Part of that is being able to like move through hard stuff and to be able to say to continue going even when it feels difficult. And yet it is where it puts you at danger when it's pushed to a certain degree. And so it sounds like, let me make sure I'm understanding correctly. You had a couple of moments that now reflecting back on it that you're like, oh, there's that moment and there's that moment where my ego kicked in. One with a teammate on the sideline who's trying to get a moment to just be able to be on the field for a little bit. And then there's the next moment of two guys holding you back when you're running with the ball and you're like, and they're trying to take the ball. So two moments where you can reflect on where there was a choice point and the choice you made was to push through.
And I think the point here, Travis, is that there can be a positive way of using it and a
Yeah.
negative way.
Yeah.
I used the negative way, that I wasn't enough, right, in that
Mm,
moment. But if you are enough, right, then you're striving to just be the best version of you in that moment, right? And you don't have to put yourself in that danger because of the negativity in your head. Does that make sense?
it does. And I think it plays into, at least in the US, we talk a lot about like that male culture is inherently more risk taking. And yet I think it's a part of our socialization and part of our beliefs underneath it that drive us to take more of those risks, to try to prove something, to try to be seen as enough by others rather than knowing that we're enough in ourselves.
And that's the one.
And yeah. And so tell me a little bit more about what that accident was like for you. You said I heard you say you dislocated your neck at that point?
Yeah, I dislocated my neck, so extreme pain in the moment. It was like a hot poker. I don't know if anyone that can relate to dislocating something. It's a burn, right? And so all my muscles in my neck, spasms and were trying to protect me, I suppose. But it was such a horrible burn pain, and I stayed on that field for about an hour and a half before a helicopter, because like I said, we're a long way from town. A helicopter and doctor came out with it. And then the doctor that came gave me some medication to take the pain away. And next 5 days was pretty blurry, in and
Mm,
out of ICU. And I was pretty crook because I'd been on a wet ground for an hour and a half. So I had pneumonia. I had all sorts of complications. And when I did wake up, it was that realization that I was in traction, looking at the ceiling and going, "Oh, please let this be a bad dream."
mm,
And that was constant for probably a couple of weeks of just waking up and going, "Please let it be a bad dream." Um, doctor came in those early days. They were pretty blunt, and uh, he pretty much said, "You do know that you're not going to walk again." And he hit me in a moment of, I can remember it just like, it felt like a kick in the gut. And, um, you know, I went through all those feelings of, God, how am I going to survive this? And yet there was this quiet voice in me that was saying, "You're going to do what you love." I had twin daughters of 16 months old at that stage. So the thought of, I had a friend ask me, actually, we had a conversation the night before where there was a terrible accident here in New Zealand. It was on the news, and we were just having a quiet drink before the game of rugby, and he was visiting from out of state. And he said, he came and saw me, and he said, "Remember that conversation we had?" And this guy got really badly injured, young fella, broke every bone in his body, including his neck. And I said to him that I'd rather be dead.
mm,
He was worried that I would want to be dead in that moment. And it's funny, it didn't even enter into my mind in those early days. It was this voice in me that was going, you're gonna survive, you're going to live, you're going to, do what you love.
mhm. It's amazing how the different perspectives we can have from, like, on the outside looking at someone else's journey, judging it as like, "I would not survive that, I wouldn't wanna live," versus being in it, how it changes your perspective quite rapidly. You grew up being very physical, very, like, aware of your ability physically, and that maybe some of the more mental stuff at school, and you were mentioning that you got diagnosed with dyslexia, that some of those other parts were hard, so much of your identity and, like, skill set was so physical in nature, and then now that's taken away from you. What was that like early on for you to come to terms with as a man, recognizing that what you were once strong at may no longer be what you have access to?
I went through all the parts of trauma, of loss.
Yeah.
you know, I lost my best friend, my
Mm,
physical self. So I had to bury him pretty much. And so
mm,
that took time. There was a lot of ups and downs. And, you know, I had some dark moments later on because, you have time to think and then you go, "Oh, shit, do I really wanna live like this?" So, there was moments later on, and it took time to heal and to, overcome the grief of losing my physical self in that way. I went back to the farm. So I farmed for 15 years after my accident. And I think that helped that I still could be physical. And I reckon that's why I'm in such good shape today
Hmm.
is, that physical early, being back in the chair, learning to do all these things again, like transfers and weights and get strong enough so I could drive. And um, that took time. And I had my marriage didn't survive. I had all these things that I had to work out and overcome and grieve and move on and try to create again. And um, um, but there was some wins within it, if that makes sense. And about 5 years after my accident, I started to run the farm again with being able to drive a motorbike, a four-wheeler or actual six-wheeler. It was a Canadian Argo, which, amphibious kinda
Mm.
shell on it, and they're flat, close to the ground, and they're very stable. And that gave me a lot of confidence. And I had my dogs again, and I had to learn to whistle and yell, which you know my accident froze my chest muscles. So
Mm.
just all those things that helped me be well, if you know what I mean. I saw someone in a wheelchair yesterday. I was going to the gym, and it's very similar sort of injury to me, and he looks frail, and he's having trouble breathing to speak. All I could think of was, man, I was so blessed that I had
Mm.
the farm to go back to, and had to yell at my dogs to get them under control
Bless
sometimes.
those dogs.
And then I ended up marrying a girl that came and worked for me on the farm as well, and she helped me with the kids in the house, and came out on the farm and opened the gates. And obviously over time we fell in love, or became really good friends and then fell in love. And there was even a few arguments there, mate.
Oh, undoubtedly, I'm sure.
She left me in the paddock a couple of times. No, knowing I couldn't get out.
Just put you in timeout,
Yeah, but
huh?
yeah, it was just learning to grow and create a new chapter and create life again differently.
Mhm. I think something I'm hearing in this that I kind of find myself struck by is like it seems like it would be very easy to pay attention to this being a very like a season of loss for you, losing the ability to walk, losing your physicality, losing a marriage, losing yourself in some ways. And yet
Mhm.
I hear so much of this journey was also a creative process for you.
Big time,
And when you
big.
learn to accept what reality is rather than argue with what reality is, which is definitely one of my favorite games to try to say that it should be different than it is. But when we learn to accept what it is, there's so much creation that what you were going through and learning new ways of doing things and finding your way through things. And yeah, it's probably hard to access sometimes the gratitude that you have now back that in some of those darker moments, but it is
Yeah,
interesting to hear what a creation journey you've been on in order to find yourself through this.
yeah, mate. And if I can give anything to the listeners, that's one thing, is that you are creation. Uh,
Mm,
and you get to create from where you are whatever you'd love. And you're that powerful that, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have taken on that doctor's belief.
Mm,
Right? That's how powerful we are.
mm,
You know, I I have created this amazing life from a wheelchair over 30 years now, or nearly 30 years. And 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 it is I've created fully within my belief system, if that makes sense. Right. And that's the secret.
mm,
And break that belief system. There's a lovely guru. I don't know if you've ever come across Sanguru. He's quite often on socials
mm,
from India, and I think he says that. I hope I don't get it wrong, but believe in nothing. It's also a quote in my book. Um, believe in nothing, question everything.
mm,
So you become that way. Stay curious, question everything, because you learn your own belief, right? Or you sorry, your own truth is the
mhm.
word, not belief. And I love that. I think that's the way that we have to all start to think instead of defined by this human experience and what we've learnt, and just taking that as belief. Be curious and question it and question it and question it, and you come to your own truth.
Those seem like such important parts of the development of resilience in a difficult and challenging world. Or sort of like being willing to stay curious even when it feels hard, be willing to question things even when you feel sure, but being able to stay in the movement and the process of it. Let's pull that apart a little bit because I notice that I find myself kind of vacillating between moments of feeling a lot of resilience in our current world in terms of some of the hard stuff that are going on. I think many Americans would be sort of in that place of like, what is happening in our country, in our world? Where are we going? There's so much uncertainty. I do find myself having a lot of resilience at different times, but then I also sink into moments of not being very resilient. I find it hard to be curious. I find it hard to feel that empowered sense that you were talking about to be able to continue stepping forward, even though it feels like there's so many things set in front of us and me that are out of my control that I don't have power over. So tell me a little bit more about like how do we navigate when we run into those moments of uncertainty, when we run into those moments of feeling powerless? How do we do what you did to create your own life, to become creation?
And that's it. That that's it. Creation. I think we have to start opening our mind to who we truly are
Mm,
spiritually first. I've been having this conversation with my wife, and there's three things that I think are truths: that we are creation. We're one with the universe, right? There's a part of us that is same as nature, right? Same as if you look at nature, if it's left alone, it's abundant and it creates its, in its own time. I saw a post today, the flower will bloom in its own time. It's
mhm,
creation, right? And we are creation too. We get to create with this power, whatever this power is that's breathing us. Right? That's a truth that we have to grasp first. And most people forget about that, or they haven't really explored that yet. Um, and they get caught up in today's world instead.
mhm,
Right? So that's number one. Number two is that we are abundant because we are nature, create with the same stuff as nature. So that's number two. We're creation and abundant. And the third one is that we're unconditional love.
mm,
All right. That creation, whatever it is breathing us, that we have inside us, is love. Is love. Right. And so if we can take those three things as truths in our own life, then we have to then understand that we don't need to control anything outside of us. We only have to control what's inside of us. That gives us a calm, especially if you believe in those three truths.
I think that's where I'm finding more and more calm as I start to pull away and recognize there are things outside of everything outside of me is out of my control. And
Yeah.
so it was deluding myself to believe I had control over any of those things for a long time. And when I actually get that and actually start to focus in here, that's where I am finding those moments of calm or those resilience, even in the storm that's around.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that we don't stand up for what we believe in.
Yeah.
Right? It's really important that we do our part. Everyone has their part. And I love that, God's got a plan. It's a long game. It's not a
Hmm.
short game. Right. So the chaos, and if we think about history and look back in history, chaos. We've got chaos at the moment because things are changing, right? To you just have to look at an airport. That's yeah, the plane seems to get to its destination, right? And
I don't know. That's in question these days. There's enough flight issues.
right, yeah, maybe, right? But my point is that we have to in our history, there's always been chaos, so something better can come from it. And at the moment, we've got a lot of chaos
Mm-hmm.
and belief systems, right? And that's not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned, because you know those belief systems are outdated and they're old and they don't fit
Mm.
with creation, abundance, and love.
They certainly
Right,
do not. They
right.
certainly do not.
So there's some this. Oh, when you really believe in those three, there's a real calmness.
Mm.
And, that's what I help, and that's what you do with your horses, and that's what I do with my coaching,
Mhm.
is that I bring people back, and I like to call that side of us, that true nature, that other nature. We've got the human experience as one nature. That's where the beliefs have been created. But then the other nature is the real nature or the true nature, and I like to call that the inner warrior. Right. So that's what I've written about in my book is how we can move more into creating a relationship with that true nature. It's your instincts, it's
Mm.
your gut sense, it's your knowing, it's that little voice that I had when I went, how am I going to survive this? It went to me, it's said to me, and it's done it many times in my life. It's always there. Yours is always there. It's just, I think it was Gandhi. It's as loud as you want to hear it.
Mm.
So it's about creating a relationship with that power that we already have, because we're bloody powerful.
Mhm.
We just don't know our power, or
Mm.
we're scared of it. One of the
Yeah.
two. You know.
Yeah. There's a tension point in here for me that I wanna kind of pull apart that feels like personal learning for me, but I think there are plenty of guys that listen to this podcast that might feel similarly. Like, I'm very with you in sort of looking at the long game, recognizing the creative element behind chaos, behind sort of the destruction for creation process. I get that on a spiritual level, on a long game level, but I also appreciate you also said that that doesn't mean that we don't stand up for what we believe in and stand up for others and try to like take action as humans. How do you decide for yourself if you're believing in this, noticing the spiritual truths, but you also feel this sort of inclination from the human that wants to take action? Like, how do you know when to move and when to trust the process?
Well, the process for me, and this is great, Travis, because I think a lot of people struggle with this. The
Mm-hmm.
process for me is coming back to those three truths. This has been really strong, and it's funny how this all lines up. This has been really strong in the last couple of weeks.
Mm.
Coming back to those three major truths: love, abundance, and creation, right? Love, unconditional love. It has to be a yes, right? So whatever choice you choose or decide for in the human experience, align yourself with those three.
Mm.
If it's unconditional love for those around you, even those that you don't like so much, right? What is right? What is a yes, right? And you look at um, um, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, all those amazing um, world changes that we've had in our past. That's what they've done. They've stood
Mm.
up for the yes, even though it was incredibly challenging
Mm.
and threatening in both those cases. Um,
I'm glad you give those examples because it was life threatening because that's what I think that's the tension point for me is like, yes, I believe in those truths too, but then what do I do when I watch rights being taken away from people that I love and care about? When physical harm and danger is happening to people across the world because of different policies and different things that are being put in place? Like, how do I stay aligned with those truths when I'm angry, when I'm scared, when I'm when life feels unfair, when I'm watching unfairness happen at least.
it's a practice
Yeah.
of unconditional love because you have to love the enemy as well. You have to love the people that take the policy. You have to find a perception, changing your perception because they're only doing what they think is right for them too, right? So who says they're wrong? Because remember, there's a long plan here, right? They're showing up exactly how we need them as spiritual beings to show up, right? Because without them, we're not going to change the
Mm.
work, all those old beliefs, right? So this is where it really gets juicy, I
Yeah, I was gonna
reckon.
say, I'm like, here it is. Here's the moment.
Yeah, but this is the truth: is the ones that you think is taking away the rights, it's doing God's plan just the way it wants to, because we it it's stirring up that chaos, which is then going to create something even better. Well,
Mm,
we
mm,
stand up for it, right?
mhm,
So, and that for me is unconditional love. I
mm.
don't get caught up in who's rights and who's wrong here. I just go, right, what do I believe in within those three truths is the right thing to do,
Well,
right?
that's an interesting piece that you just brought up because I think it can be easy in our current world with the current divisiveness and picking sides and rights and wrongs and dualities, and it can be easy to try to understand what you believe based on someone being right and someone being wrong. And you have to pay attention to who's right and who's wrong to understand what you believe. And what you're saying is turn your attention away from that and focus on what do I believe aligned to those three things.
Yes.
That's a game that's being played over here that's very tempting and can be easy to sort of format your belief systems and your truths around. But that's also playing sides and it's making rights and wrongs. It's like, okay, what do I believe in connected to these three other truths?
Yeah. Well, unconditional love, we're all one, right?
Mm,
And in a spiritual sense,
yeah.
right? We're all creation, right? We need polarity to
Mm,
create whatever it is, right?
hmm.
That's why we got hot and cold and
Light and dark and
like, yeah, right.
yeah.
So whoever you're against or don't like or their opinions, they're doing perfect. the perfect job.
Mm,
They're doing exactly what they're meant to, and I've fallen on the human side of this and dislike certain people because they've affected my life
mhm,
personally, right?
mhm.
But I have to bring myself, and it's a practice, I have to bring myself back to those three truths: unconditional love, abundance, and creation.
I love how well you can bring us back to those truths because I watch myself get into like spin off and go, okay, well, what about this? And you're like, okay, let's come back to here. What about this? And then spring it back to here. And it makes sense to me that your journey with your accident has taught you to have a relationship to chaos and to understand it's even in loss, there is creation. Even in the destructive things, there is new hope for something more full, more whole, more aligned to those truths when we go through those processes. And your journey has made you, well, I guess you had a choice in it, but your journey has taught you how to make friends with that, how to be aligned with it rather than to push against it.
My journey was the catalyst to my own healing.
Yeah. Mm,
My accident was the catalyst to my own healing and becoming closer to that unconditional love.
mm. That's beautiful. I think I'd just like to sit in that for a moment because it's a twist on it that I think that most people, much like yourself, when you were talking to the person that had broken every bone in his body, is that you wouldn't want to survive or live from after an injury like that previously. And it's interesting to hear your perspective now. And it's like that injury is what led to your healing.
Yeah. And I ended up in the bed next to that guy, right?
Uh huh.
And he had more movement than I did.
Uh.
And it was like, what? How did that work? Be careful what you ask for,
Uh huh. Yeah. 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 For sure.
because we're creation, right? So, and it's just funny how, there's so much synchronicity, even when we don't
Mm,
think there is,
mm-hmm,
even within the chaos, right? There's a plan, yeah, and you have to, mind you, you have to have that belief, right?
mm-hmm,
You have to have, and you're only going to get that belief is by being curious, questioning every belief you have, because you're not going to get to the truth or your truth otherwise.
mm-hmm,
You're going to get stuck in the human experience of the belief that you've created from that.
mm.
And there's something bigger here, and we have to, yeah, we have to come back to that truth, and you have to find that truth first
Mm.
before you can come back to that truth.
So, in your exploration of finding that truth for yourself, what words would you put to right now of like where we are as men or what is a man these days? Do you have any thoughts on how where we're headed as a male culture?
Yeah, I think we've got a big part to play, right?
Mm,
We're seeing the feminine or the rise of the feminine, and we have both energies in each one of us, right? Which is fantastic. We need the feminine to rise, but we also have to be the masculine
mm,
beside the feminine, right? And that the modern masculine man is one who comes back to those three truths.
I see what you're
I,
doing here. I see that again.
I can't help it because it's three truths, right?
Fantastic. Yeah.
Right? And then so we stand beside them, the feminine, in this modern world with those three truths. We
Hmm.
stand for unconditional love now, right? And 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 abundance in all areas of life. It's not just money, it's everything. It's we are creation. We're allowed to be abundant. It's our true nature. Guess what blocks it? Human experience, the beliefs that you're holding,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Can you see how this works?
Uh-huh.
It should do by now. And then the third one, right? Which is, that love, unconditional love.
Beautiful. I think it's aligns with what I most want for us as men to grow into, which is learning to have power with the other beings in our lives rather than power over, because that power over sort of shows that we're not in an abundant mindset. We're in a scarcity mindset that we have to take and we have to hoard and we have to have over someone else. And so, sort of aligning with the feminine, having power with, so that we can evolve into the next version through this chaos, feels so aligned with what my perspective and belief is around what's happening right now.
Well, see, what you just said, that was my mindset when I had my accident,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As the ego.
Power over. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, I had to have power over everyone else, and all it did was get me put in a
Mm,
wheelchair, right?
mm,
And then, if you think of, I love Sly and Arnie Schwarzenegger,
mm-hmm.
they had this amazing competition between the two of them, and they didn't actually like each other back in the 80s because they were both these action stars going for roles, right? And then they became friends because one of them said, "Mate, you make me a better actor."
Mm,
Right? All of a sudden that changes,
mm-hmm.
then unconditional love and becoming better within, you know,
Mm,
we're all moving up together. It's
mm-hmm.
not competition, it's actually help. Come on, let's make each other better.
Mm-hmm.
Travis, make me better. Make me a better person, and I'll make you a better person.
Mm,
And it's the same with all those people that we think is ruining the world. Well,
mm-hmm.
they're actually helping us all move up.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with if we do our part and stand up for what those three truths
Yeah. Yeah, they
within.
sharpen and hone us over time. We need those
Yep.
friction elements in order to do that process. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine people that are listening to this might be really curious about working with you because, as you said, it's sort of that practice of coming back to those truths, and we get lost a little bit and then we come back to them and then we get lost a little bit.
It's a
And
breakfast. It's
yeah, it
definitely a
is.
breakfast. Yeah.
And I think our socialization says we're supposed to learn how to do that practice alone. And yet, I think a lot of us could benefit from doing that with the support of someone else, someone who can hold that truth. Like, even just in our conversation, you kept bringing us back to those truths. And that's an important part of, even that hones me, that sharpens me, that brings my skill set forward. And so, if people wanted to work with you, tell me a little bit about your work as a coach and what you're doing out there in the world.
Yeah, mate. I've got a book that I've written last year called The Inner Warrior, The Power Within, and it's got a little companion book with it that helps. It's called Storms Create Warriors. Uh, um, I'm speaking, out there, putting as much content as I possibly can out there. But if someone's really interested, Travis, and really resonates with our conversation today, I will actually offer 10 complimentary strategy sessions, which is about a 45-minute call to an hour, where we really get clear on those blocks and challenges that they might be facing, because that's the key. And they're often the blocks that are stopping us from creating that life that we would really love. Um, and then we'll get clarity on what they would love to create instead.
Mm,
What is it that's really in the heart that would really, that they haven't been able to create up until now. And then we'll look at the strategy of, what is the steps to cross that bridge or that gap from where they are to where they would love to be,
mm,
um, in that 45-hour minute. Now, this does have a cost with it. It normally would be $250, but for the first 10 that would love one of those strategy sessions, uh, I that's totally complimentary, man.
that's a very generous offering of you and totally aligned with your spiritual truth of abundance. Man, I add. Not coming from a place of scarcity, offering of yourself, putting as much content out in the world, offering spaces for people to come in and experience something as they're trying to find their way through things. Sounds like is that when someone does sign up for something like that, is that done one-on-one or in a group process?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, it's a Zoom call. It's a
Got it.
one-on-one Zoom call with me. So you're getting me.
So
Yeah.
those of us across the world could actually benefit from it too. We don't have to be a Kiwi, huh?
Oh, man, that's the beauty of today in
Uh-huh.
technology, isn't it? You know,
Yep.
and on your point, Travis, is that's the best feeling
Mm,
is seeing someone get those three truths and then starting to apply it in their own life.
mhm,
Man, that's going to help us get out of the chaos.
mhm.
You know, that's more and more people standing up for that truth.
Yeah.
Whew, you know, all of a sudden we'll get to tipping point and the world will change so
Mm.
quickly. And there's a lot of people like you and I that are doing this stuff. And, you know, so if you do resonate with me and Travis, then hit us up.
Hit
We'll
us
help you out.
up.
Yeah, hit us up.
How do people find your work in the world? What's your website? What are you on social media? Like, tell us a little bit more about how people will find you.
Yeah, I've got a website, Wayne Forrest. Forrest is two R's, the same as
Mm-hmm.
runforrestrun.com. So it's really simple. WayneForrest.com, one word, and lowercase. And I'm on socials as well. But if you go to my website, you'll be able to follow through Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Yeah,
And then on your website, is there a place for people to sign up directly with you for this
yeah, yeah.
complimentary session?
We'll put the link in the bio. I'll give you that, and so people can hit that link. And there's a form that they have to fill out, and then once they fill that out, they'll get a Zoom link with the calendar. They can pick a time. Um, I can't do more than 10 a month, as
Yeah.
you can understand.
Yeah.
But uh, you know, definitely get in there quick, and I'll definitely serve you the first 10 as much as I possibly can.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being so generous with yourself just in our conversation today, generous in your offerings to the world so that people, so I feel really a lot of kinship around that, moving in the direction of that tipping point that you're talking about, putting
Mm.
ourselves out there, being of service in the world to try to help us stand up for what we believe in and to really stand forward in our truths so that we can move ourselves into a more whole and more abundant and a more loving experience for all of us.
Well, that's the modern masculine man.
Yeah.
Mm.
Period.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Wayne, for joining me for this episode. And I can't recommend that people go to your website enough so that you can sign up for one of those sessions with Wayne, so that you can get what I got out of this and keep getting reminded of those three spiritual truths that really bring us back to what it's really about. Thanks again, Wayne, for joining me. If you want to go find me, you can go to my website at travisstock.com. You can go to my Instagram at Travers03. If something from this conversation is sticking out to you, you have a question, you want to keep this conversation going, find me there at Travers03. And if you want to become a contributor to this podcast, you're enjoying this mission, you want to support me in doing it, please go to patreon.com/the new masculine. Thanks, Wayne, for joining me. And until our next episode.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Travis.